But we wanted to welcome everybody this morning for our last Chamber Conexión for October. Fun fact, I was doing some research and it is Physical Therapy Month in October. So that's super exciting that we have Dr. Adrian Cantu with us, physical therapist who owns Performance. We are really excited to learn how to not let work give us pain today. Really the heart of our topic of conversation is we are all in this new world of work where we're either working from home or working from the office. And it's just hard to get comfortable with just so many different aspects in terms of working virtually and this new reality of ours. And so I wanted to bring Dr. Cantu on board with us this morning to really just talk through some tips and advice on what can we be doing at our home office, or if we're in the office like I am today, on really just making our body feel good so we can accomplish our goal for each and every day. This is one of our last webinars of the year, so we're really excited to kind of finish off strong. So this is going to be a really entertaining topic. If you guys have any questions at all, if you are on Zoom, please drop them in the chat box. Dr. Cantu and I will see that. And if you are streaming and joining us via Facebook Live, feel free to drop in any comments or questions in the Facebook comment section as well. And I will be reading those and bringing them over so we can get those answered. And if you have any good feedback that you would like to share at the end of this, please do. But Dr. Cantu, I kind of want to let you take it away. So if you can kind of just tell us a little bit about you and your business, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, sure thing. So hi, everybody. My name is Dr. Adrian Cantu. I want to thank Serena and the Fort Worth Hispanic Chamber of Commerce for having me here on their Chamber Conexión so I can provide the presentation of Don't Let Work Give You Pain. So I am the owner of Ace Physio Performance. It is a cash-based physical therapy clinic. It's a little bit different than your traditional brick and mortar insurance-based clinic. What I do is I offer patients one-on-one time strictly with me, so that way they don't have to be shared with other patients. It gives them time to just be spent with their direct provider, and it allows me to give them the best care that they need. So what I'm going to do is talk to you a little bit about Don't Let Work Give You Pain. Okay, so the objectives for today are to give some poor work posture examples, talk about some proper work site setup, and a few exercises y'all can do in order to help with any issues you might be facing. All right. So just a little bit more about me and my clinic. We do specialize in returning weekend warriors to their competitive sports without pain medication, injections, or surgery. You can follow me on Instagram at AcePhysPerform. And Serena, if you could go ahead and switch over to the next slide, please. Okay, so there I am. There's my Instagram tag right there. And for the most part, that can be used for my LinkedIn, Facebook. So if you want to find out some more about me, what I do is I offer information through all of those websites, whether it be blogs or video content, just to describe some exercises that people might be able to do in order to help out with some issues they may be facing. So you can go ahead on to the next one. So I chose this picture here as a poor work posture example because it shows several instances of how we tend to sit and do our work, especially if we're on our computers continuously. So as you can see, now this lady has a desk that's a little bit too high for her. And I'll go into how to correct these things on the next slide. But as you can see, she's a little bit elevated through her elbows, so she's bringing her shoulders up like so. She's having to bring her head forward in order to look down at her computer, which isn't ideal because that can lead to some neck pain, some back pain. As you can see also, the chair itself, it doesn't look like it has any kind of back support, which is something that is going to give you some low back pain if you don't have anything for that. It also doesn't have any kind of armrest, so that's another thing that you might want to consider. Now, as you can see, she is using a laptop, so when we use a laptop, we typically don't have any kind of ergonomic assistance. And I'll talk about some of those things that we can use as well in order to help these issues. Okay, so let's go on to the proper work site setup. So as I mentioned, desk height is one of the biggest things that is hard to adjust, okay, because a desk height can either be too tall or too short. Now, some things we can modify simply based off of the chair that we have. If it's able to elevate or lower, that can modify it. So say, for example, the desk is too tall for you. For a person that's a little bit shorter, what will happen is they're going to have to scoot towards the front of their chair. So when they do that, they're not going to be able to have that lumbar support that they need for their back, which can lead to that low back pain. Also, if they're having to lean more forward, they're having to put their feet on the floor, which instead of being at that nice 90 degree angle, think of a square, the way it should be whenever our back is against that chair, our hips are going to be lower than 90, and then our knees are going to be greater than 90 as well. So that can give us potentially some hip issues, not so much some knee issues, but it just sets us up for poor posturing and some more pain, especially in our low back. All right. So some things that you can do when it comes to a desk height is make sure to adjust the chair. So you want it to where your hips and knees are at 90 degrees. If the desk height is not able to be modified with an elevating stand or lowering stand, then you want to make sure to use a footrest. Now, the chair, as you can see in this example, it doesn't have any kind of elbow rests. So as I mentioned earlier, when we don't have that elbow rest, what happens is our shoulders just tend to sag down. And in order for us to combat that, what we have to do is we tend to pull up our shoulders like so. Well, a lot of times people tend to carry their stress through their shoulders. Well, and they're thinking, well, why am I doing that? Adrian is nodding, yep. So one of those things can be because you don't have that elbow support whenever you're working on your computer, okay? So if you have that elbow support to where you're able to rest your elbows on those arm rests, your shoulders aren't being depressed and lengthened through here. You're able to keep your elbows at 90 degrees as well, and whenever you're working on your work site. Now, the monitor plays a huge role as well, okay? As you can see, this monitor itself would probably be a little too large for a typical person in that chair. When you are setting up your work site, you want to make sure, first off, you're all the way back in your chair, and when you stick your arm out, that is as far as the monitor is from you. Okay, so if I were to sit all the way back, you can see it'd be a little too far from me. But granted, I'm having to use this setup right now for this. At the same time, the way the monitor is set up, the height of it needs to be adjusted. So when you're sitting up nice and tall and you're looking straight ahead, the top of your monitor should be at eye level or below, okay? A lot of times people will have it higher up, and what they're doing is they're constantly having to do this motion. And when they're doing that, what's happening is these muscles back here are having to be overactive, and that can give you some neck pain. Okay, so if you're constantly doing this throughout the day, yes, you didn't think you might have been doing much, but over time it is going to affect you. You also want to make sure that the monitor is directly in front of you. Okay, a lot of times people will have it off to the side, so they'll be looking at it like so, doing their typical work. Well, if you're constantly looking at one way or the other, then once again, some muscles are going to be overactive, leading to some imbalances and can lead to some of that pain just because they're doing more than they want to be doing. Our body, for the most part, just wants to be left alone. It's our job to keep it moving and keep it optimal so that way we don't have that pain. So let's talk about the mouse and keyboard a little bit. So when I mentioned ergonomics earlier, there are some ergonomic assistance that you can use. So this here is a wrist pad that you can place in front of your keyboard. So that's something that you want to make sure to use so that way your wrists aren't going into extension like so, and that can lead to carpal tunnel. We don't want you to have carpal tunnel. As y'all know, that can be very detrimental. It can lead to some kind of numbness or tingling in the hands. You can feel that throughout the day or at night. So all you have to do is just get a little pad off Amazon or any store, just set that right in front of your keyboard, and that'll help out your wrists. Okay, so as well as your mouse, you can get a mouse pad that has a little bit of wrist support too. Okay, so you can see here, I'm able to rest my wrist on this without it once again being in that extension position like so. Now, personally, I'm not a fan of traditional mouse setup. I prefer a trackball setup to where I'm just using my thumb to move my mouse instead of actually using my wrist to navigate around wherever I'm looking. Because once again, if you can take away any kind of potential stimuli that can lead to damage, we want to do that. So that's why I just use these simple ergonomic things that are fairly cheap and that can help you out in the long run when it comes to not having pain in your wrists, in your back, in your neck. So mentioning the back as well, I have a little lumbar support here, as you can see. So that gives me some curvature to my spine support. So that way I'm not just slouching down like this throughout the day or leaning forward in that position. That way you can sit up tall. You want to make sure that you are putting yourself in an optimal position whenever you're going to be in a position for a long time. All right. And then finally, let's talk about the phone. So whenever you're setting up your work site, you want to make sure that your phone is once again at arm's length away from you. You don't want to have to be reaching constantly for it one way or the other. Just if you're going to be using it constantly, have it close to you to where you can just grab it and get on the phone. Now, depending on if you spend a lot of time on the phone or just quick calls, you want to make sure if you are going to be on the phone a lot that you have some sort of headset. So that way you're not just holding the phone like this, and then that can lead to some neck pain down the road as well. Okay, so you want to make sure that you're just making it easier on your body, especially if you're going to be in these positions for hours at a time. Now, especially right now, we've all been doing Zoom meetings more. We've been working from home more. Our home work site doesn't tend to be the best setup compared to work. However, work site setup as well doesn't always have an ergonomic assessment to it either. It's just, here's a desk, do whatever you want with it, and that's what people do. Well, by making these minor adjustments to your work site, this can potentially lead to a decrease in any kind of risk of harm to your body and keep you healthy and pain-free. All right. So next, what I'm going to do are show you some exercises that can potentially lead to some issues, that can potentially help some issues that we face. So on to the next slide, please. Okay, so 3 exercises that I chose to kind of help our general whole body, okay? And by all means, y'all are welcome to join me. I'm going to demonstrate them to y'all so that way you have an idea of what they are. Because if I were to show you this and not show you, be like, okay, I don't know what the heck I'm doing. So the first one, I call it chicken wing, and that's just based off of how we position ourselves. So the end position is like this. Okay, so what I'm doing with my hands is I'm placing them on the sides of my spine. So as you can see right there. Now, and it's at the bottom of your neck and where your mid-spine join together. So you're right there. Now from this position, your arms come forward and then you open up. And you can try to open up and you're trying to push your spine forward at the same time. So what this is trying to help with is trying to eliminate that forward head posture that we get by being on our computers, on our phones, pretty much anything that we do these days, we tend to be in this forward posture. So if we can help out our upper spine and lower cervical spine by going into this position, you're getting into that extension, which we don't tend to do throughout our day. We tend to be more in a flexion bias. So anytime we get into an extension bias, it's more beneficial for us. Now, something to keep in mind is when you go into that open position, you might feel a pop. If you do, it's perfectly fine as long as it's not painful. Sometimes it's just some air bubbles popping. It's just like when you crack your knuckles, nothing to worry about. Okay. So that's for your lower cervical and your mid-spine exercise. Now with that exercise, it's just kind of a feel-good one. You're just doing some mobilizations. You can do 20, 30 of those. Doesn't really matter so much on the repetition that you're doing. It's just that you're actually doing something for yourself. Okay. So the next exercise, seated rotation. So same thing, you just stay seated in your chair. You just give yourself a little hug. And what you're doing, keeping your feet firmly planted on the floor, you're going to turn as far as you can. Hold that for a couple of seconds. And then same thing the other way, and hold that for a couple of seconds. Now, you might feel that going one way or the other is a little bit harder, or you can't go as far, and that's natural. We tend to be direction biased simply because if we're right side or left side dominant, or if we played sports when we were younger, you're going to have those more limitations compared to side, and that's okay. But the thing is that you're actually moving your spine is the benefit, because naturally as we age, our mid spine, our thoracic spine, we don't tend to do any kind of rotation movements. So by actually getting yourself into doing rotation, what we're accomplishing are several things. So we're not, yes, we are doing a rotation moment with our spine here, but what happens, bring my Mr. Bone Jangles over here a little bit. So when we rotate, what's happening here is we're also getting a forward motion and a backward motion on the opposite side, okay? So what that's simulating is as if we're doing either a flexion or an extension moment, but one-sided by getting that rotation, okay? So that's kind of for your mid-spine. And then the last one I chose for squats for your exercise, simply because if we are constantly sitting at our desk for hours at a time, we do need to get up. Now, yes, you are sitting and standing throughout the day, but it's not an actual squat. And just doing maybe 10 squats, you get up to go get something from the copier, or you go into your kitchen if we're now at home doing these Zoom meetings. Just do 10 squats while you're at your desk. So that way you're strengthening your legs at the same time. Okay, and it has great benefits because the more we use our legs, the more calories we are burning. Anytime we use our legs, we are burning more calories in general, simply because they are larger muscles. Now, something to keep in mind when you're doing your squats is you want to make sure that your knees aren't going inwards together. Okay, you want to make sure that your knees are in line with your hips, they're in line with your ankles. Okay, that's the biggest thing, because if your knees are constantly going inwards when you're going into that squat position, well, that tells you a few things. One, that you do have some weakness in your hips, and two, that you're having to compensate by getting that stability of your knees touching to help you sit or stand. Well, I don't know about you, but I'd rather not have to have a total knee replacement or a total hip replacement in the future, simply by just making yourself more conscious and more aware of how you move throughout your day. Our bodies are great at moving and getting whatever task you give it accomplished. You tell it to do something, it's going to do it. It might not be the prettiest, but it'll get it done. It's just as if you were to use a screwdriver when it would have been better to use a Phillips head. Kind of the same thing. It's going to get it done. It might not be the prettiest, but it'll get done. Okay. So simple little tweaks to exercises play a role. Form plays a role because, like I said, our body does want to cheat. So just kind of staying on top of that to where we're not cheating as much. But these are 3 exercises that I chose for y'all to help out throughout the day, just simply because of based off of how we are when we're here sitting at a desk in front of our Zoom meetings, or if you're at work. This just gives you, doesn't even take 5 minutes to do these 3 exercises, about 20 repetitions of the chicken wing, 20 repetitions turning side to side, and 10 squats, not even 5 minutes, and that'll get you moving. Okay. So in conclusion, the final slide, don't let your pain get any worse. So schedule your free total body screen today. So I offer a 20-minute free total body screen to anybody, whether that is yourself, friends, family. That is a free 20 minutes with me. Ask me whatever you want about your body. I'll take a look at you, see how you move, see if there's things that we can work on, and we can come up with a game plan. Okay. I do want to thank Serena and the Fort Worth Hispanic Chamber of Commerce for having me on today for the Chamber Conexión. I really appreciate the opportunity to speak with all of y'all, and I will open it up to y'all for questions.
All righty. Well, I'm going to stop screen share just so we can all see each other here. But we do have some questions that I want to get to that have come in through our chat box, and then just some in general that I want to touch base on. So one of the questions that we have gotten is from Reginald Grant, and he says, thank you for addressing lumbar and shoulder pain. Can core strengthening relieve pain?
So can core strengthening relieve pain?
Yes.
Okay. So yes and no. It depends on where the pain is stemming from. So a lot of times, yes, you might be experiencing pain in one location, but it can be coming from somewhere else. So we do experience referred pain at times. So simply just strengthening your core can potentially, yes, help out, but at the same time, it cannot. Once again, it comes back to form. If you're using proper form and doing the things that you need to strengthen, then yes, it can help out. But if you're feeding into a pattern that's actually making things worse, then it's not going to help out.
Now, the next question that we have, I know a lot of folks hear, the term physical therapy and occupational therapy. What is the difference, and why is physical therapy the better one?
Okay, so it's not so much that it's a better one. We work in conjunction, okay? So the way physical therapy is thought of is it's kind of your global body, how we move as a whole. So typically, it depends on the setting. So like in a hospital setting, physical therapy is going to be more for your lower extremities and your core. Occupational therapy is going to be more for the upper extremities. Okay, so your hands to your shoulders. And that's in the hospital setting. When it comes to an outpatient setting, once again, it can kind of be separated that way. But the way to think about it better is occupational therapy is going to be more of your activities of daily living. So it's going to be your showering, your food making, working, those kinds of tasks that you have to do throughout the day. Whereas physical therapy is going to be just your general overall health and what you're doing throughout your day. I know a lot of times people think occupational therapy, so they think, oh, well, I have to go there for work. Well, you can, yes and no. It just depends on what your goal is and what you're trying to achieve.
I like it. Now, let's say somebody was to do a therapy session with you, Dr. Cantu. What happens in this therapy session with you? What are some of the things that you focus on? Because I know for me, when I think of therapy session, I think of a gym session, right? Because you're still working your muscles in your body and probably breaking a sweat. So what goes on in a therapy session with you?
Yeah. So the typical first session is going to be your evaluation. That can be anywhere from 60 minutes to 90 minutes, depending on what all we need to cover, depending on how many body parts we need to cover really as well. So by an evaluation, what it does is it gives me the opportunity to see how you move, how you might be compensating, where you might be weak, and what we need to strengthen because of that weakness. So when I take a look at your whole body, I come up with a game plan and say, okay, based off of this being weak, having limited mobility here, this is what we need to work on. But the key thing is, what is the person's goal? Okay. I never want to put my goal onto a person because say the person wants to run. Well, I'm like, well, I don't want you to run. That's not ever my goal. I want you to achieve whatever goal you have. If it's whether it's running, walking, hiking, swimming, golf, whatever it is, I want that to be what we're working towards. And by you telling me what we need to work on and why it's important to you, that gives me the insight on how I need to treat you. Now, that's just the first session. Afterwards, then we come up with the actual plan of care and we determine how many visits you might need to see me, and then we talk about that.
I know everybody's kind of in their virtual reality right now. So for those of you that are tuning in, especially on Zoom, I know that there's about 11 of you. If you all want to let Dr. Cantu and I know what your current workspace setup right now is, maybe there's some tips that we can help with that. I know that John Torres, you mentioned that you are currently at your kitchen table. So I don't know how comfortable that is, but we definitely don't want work to give you pain today. But I'm going to dive into some other questions and see if anybody has any tips or advice on their current work setup that they are joining us live from right now. But one of the other questions that I had, Dr. Cantu, and if this may be kind of a liquid answer in terms of how long does physical therapy actually take?
It depends. everybody is different, and it's hard to say. So if it's an acute injury or something that just happened very recently, it can be resolved in a couple of visits, most likely, if it's not a serious injury. If nothing was actually torn or broken, it can be a fairly quick issue. Now, if it's an issue that you've been dealing with for months, or some patients I've seen years, decades, a lot of times patients, they think that, well, I'm here and I want you to be able to fix me in a month. Well, if you've been dealing with this pain for a decade and you expect me to heal you in a month, that's kind of an unrealistic goal. So what I try to educate people on is that it is multifactorial. It's based off of your history. It's based off of any other issues that are going on in your life. I mean, stress, nutrition, sleep. It's not just one facet when it comes to your health. And the more we talk about everything throughout your life, the more we're able to come up with a game plan of, okay, this is how long I expect it to take. Now, typically, most people can see if it's just some minor aches and pains that they're dealing with, some relief should be experienced within as little as 2 weeks, up to a month. Sometimes it takes longer. It just depends on what all is affected and how much it is affected.
I like it. Now, I know with physical therapy, there's usually the take-home exercises that you have to do. Are those a must? And if you don't do them for whatever reason, does that really hinder your progress in terms of the sessions that somebody's going through with you?
So with me personally, yes. So the way my model is set up is to where I typically see patients once a week. So if I'm only seeing you once a week, I'm saving you time by not having to come see me as often, but I'm also expecting you to be doing the exercises in order to go towards your goals. So I'm trying to design exercises specifically for your goals, not just what I think you should be able to do. It's what is your goal. That is always the end point that we're trying to achieve, are your goals. So if you want to be able to do a 5K, hike in Europe, or swim in a triathlon, then it is going to require you to put in the effort. If you simply just think, well, I saw my physical therapist and now I'm good, that's not the case. You do have to put in the effort in order to improve.
I like it. Now, I want to get into some questions about your business.
Okay.
So first off, where are you located and how can we find you?
Okay. So I am located inside of World Gym Burleson. So it is south of Fort Worth, basically on the Burleson and Joshua line on 174. So I have space inside of that gym. So this gives me the opportunity to work with all the equipment that they have with any of my patients. So think of personal training, but scaled up, because I am a former personal trainer. I just took my education and expanded it to where I can help patients further with more background in anatomy and physiology. Now, in order to contact me, you can reach me through my Instagram tag at AcePhysPerform, or you can go to my website at AcePhysioPerformance.com. Those are ways to simply contact me. Like I said, I do offer that free 20-minute total body screen to anybody that is ever interested. It is completely free.
I love it. We have one question that came in from Nancy Alvarez, and she says, great information provided by Dr. Cantu. It is very helpful and informative. My question is, are cramps on your upper and lower back muscles an indication of poor posture or a more serious underlying health issue?
So cramps typically aren't a more serious issue. And I say typically, I'm not saying that if you have cramps, it's never a serious issue. It just depends, once again. A lot of times we get cramps based off of our nutrition, whether we are not hydrated enough or too hydrated, whether we have poor posture is an issue, or as well, if we have any kind of weaknesses in our bodies. So when we have some weaknesses in our bodies, instead of our muscle just firing at 50% like it should, The brain tells the muscle fire 100% because it doesn't know how to control that signal simply because that muscle is weak. So a lot of times what we're trying to do through physical therapy is get that brain muscle connection stronger before we actually go into true strengthening exercises, simply because we want to make sure that you're feeling it where you need to feel it. The muscles that need to be strengthened are getting strengthened. If you're just going through emotion and achieving it, you might not be feeling where you need to feel. You might just be compensating. So I don't suspect it would be a major issue, but once again, that's something that we could chat over screen so I can get a kind of a better idea of your health. And that would give me a more idea of what you need to do.
So it sounds like, Nancy, you need to contact Dr. Cantu and he can help you. And we're excited that Nancy will be with us tomorrow for Build Fort Worth. So that might be a good chance for you guys to connect as well. There's a few last questions that I want to touch base on. And this is really just in terms of, what do you really love about your job?
I love being able to help people get back to whatever they want to do. A lot of times people think that they shouldn't be doing something because their physician said, oh, never run again, never lift a weight again. Well, that's not always the case. A lot of times we just have to scale things back a little bit before you go into that. The worst thing that a person can be told is to never do something again when they are still young and healthy. And even when they're older, we just have to modify things. And that being able to modify and adapt to the person is really what I enjoy the most, is being able to get them moving better towards whatever they want to do, but getting that creativity in my mind so that way I can, like, okay, if this is bothering you, how do we need to modify things in order for it not to be painful? Because that's the goal, is to try to decrease your pain for most people. For other people, it's other goals. Whatever your goals are, that's what I want to be able to help you accomplish.
I like it. Here's another question from John. Is cryotherapy worth the investment, or is the chiropractor more effective?
Okay. So cryotherapy is still in its infancy of research. They have made a lot of claims without having absolute research behind it. A lot of times, any kind of new kinds of medicine get a lot of traction simply because athletes try it out. And that helps build that traction for those companies. Same thing with like kinesio tape. That had a lot of traction for a while. That's slowly dying down. Everything just kind of goes through what's the biggest fad right now. I would say it depends on what your goal is for your desire to use cryotherapy. If it's something that you think is going to just simply fix it like that, not likely. If it's just something that you want to add to your training routine just to kind of help you recover, that could potentially help you, yes. Now, when it comes to chiropractic, chiropractors are great. I myself am trained in some manipulative medicine. I don't know as much chiropractic manipulations as they do, but I know some. And from my experience going to a chiropractor in the past myself, the way we differ as physical therapists to chiropractors are that we do a more full assessment of the body before we just go in there and start manipulating things. Not everything needs to be manipulated. In fact, it's better sometimes that we don't manipulate some things. It just depends on why you might need, or you feel that you need an adjustment, if you actually need to go to a chiropractor or not. In my experience with working with patients, I've had patients, well, I've been seeing a chiropractor for 20 years and they haven't helped me. It's like, well, why are you still seeing them? But you don't really want to cross that line with some patients simply because if they think it's going to help them, but at the same time, they're telling me it's not helping them, well, I'm not seeing why they're still going. But every chiropractor is different. Every physical therapist is different. Just every healthcare provider is different. You have to find the healthcare provider that's right for you, and that's going to help you achieve what you want to achieve.
I like it. Now we do have a question that came in on our Facebook live stream from Sandra Garcia. She says she's currently on her kitchen table. That seems to be a common work from home place, it seems like. And she's going to physical therapy through work due to back pain. How much do you charge per session, Dr. Cantu? And how can, I know people can contact you to kind of set up everything, but what does your average cost look like?
So it varies. If it's just a single visit, then that is going to be $249. But what I do offer are packages to where people can save some money. And then that helps us determine, so through the evaluation, it helps us determine what kind of package might suit you best. Now, as I am a cash-based out-of-network provider, it depends on if your insurance company has out-of-network benefits. Some patients do, and some patients can file the treatments that we're doing to their insurance company. And depending on if they've met their out-of-pocket max or if they're still nowhere near meeting that, it'll go towards the out-of-pocket max regardless. And I give them the information, the paperwork that they need in order to file that.
I think that answers that. Now, do you have any tips or advice, Dr. Cantu, to offer everybody that's joining us on Zoom and Facebook Live when it comes to working from home and their setup? Is there anything that maybe some of us can do a quick Amazon purchase for, or just move things around in the home that might just help us just a little bit more?
Yeah, sure thing. So as I mentioned, the lumbar support, that's something, if your chair doesn't have it, you can find that on Amazon. It's just a little curvature here to give your lumbar some support. For your wrists, get a little mat like this. That way you don't give yourself a risk of developing carpal tunnel. And that's for the keyboard as well as for your mouse. A little ergonomic one as well. It has that little lift right there for some wrist support. But the thing as well is you have to make sure that you're setting your work site up that's optimal for you to be comfortable to where you can sit there for hours on end. Typically, if you're at a kitchen counter, it's not going to be the most comfortable, especially if you're going to be there for a while. A lot of times, depending on how high it is, you're probably going to have either something in front of your knees blocking you to where you might have to sit sideways a little bit while text or typing. So if possible, I would say try a different table instead of a kitchen counter, unless that's just the best one that works for you, then by all means go for it. What you can also do is if you're at your kitchen counter, if it's high enough, you can stand, which is good for you too, to not just sit the entire day, instead just work standing for a while. That's an option too. Some of the more costly purchases you can do are some of the rising tables that you can just lift up the table to where you're here sitting, and then if you want to stand up for a while, you can still stand up. You raise up the table and you can still do your work. So that's an option as well.